I was an only child of working class parents who were in the West Riding of Yorkshire. A reasonably healthy family, but if we weren't, I distinctly remember that our GP was called Dr. Hamilton, and he had 2 surgeries a day, and he also did house visits, which was wonderful. My father wasn't well sometimes, and he came to see my father more than anything else. So those were the days when either there were more GPs or there was less demand on them.
Absolutely.
And it would be nice to have that situation back again. As I say, we were fairly healthy, but my mother, I know, she was quite keen on health and kept us as healthy as possible. And on Saturday morning, she used to, I was really, I don't know how old I was at the time, 6 or 7 years old, not maybe more than that, by the hand took me down into town, into our town called Dewsbury, with a collection box. And we stood outside Woolworths, and we collected, or my mother collected, for our local hospital, for the infirmary. I don't quite know what the money was for, whether it was to buy equipment or whether it was for repairs or what it was, but it was to help keep the hospital going anyway. And, you know, people put tuppence or whatever they could in the collecting box, and they had a little flag to put on their lapel to show that they'd made a contribution. So that was the contribution we made to a health service or to our local hospital. And I remember the time very distinctly when I had to go into hospital, but it was a very strange place. I missed out on diphtheria, thank goodness, which was very much of a killer in those days, but I did get scarlet fever. And so my little friend and myself, I suppose we got the infection from each other. We found ourselves in the isolation hospital.
Oh.
The fever, one end was diphtheria, our end was scarlet fever. And I don't know how long I was there, or I don't remember very much the care and attention. We were obviously cared for. And I think our parents could visit us twice a week, but couldn't come into the ward. They had to stay outside and look through the windows, and we had to try and lip read and wave and kiss us. And they brought a few things that they could manage, and that was about all.
How old were you?
I was probably about 7 or 8 at the time, something like that.
Quite young for not to see your parents.
Not to see your parents, yes, it was. And so I suppose you got well quickly, or you did what the nurses told you to get, because you wanted to get out very quickly.
Yes.
But the terrible thing when you were leaving was awful. I'm glad it doesn't happen these days. A sort of tube was put up your nose. I suppose it had some sort of disinfectant in. It came down and you spit it out of your mouth. And I suppose it was to clean all here if you've got any infection here. That was the torture you had to endure before you left.
Especially a 7-year-old, that would be quite frightening, wouldn't it?
It was terribly frightening.
Yeah, horrid. Yeah. And of course, presumably we don't have scarlet fever these days, do we?
I've never heard of anybody having it.
No.
Or diphtheria.
Diphtheria
really was a killer, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that was the early days. And then, of course, we moved into the 1945, after the war years, when there was a great, what I call, greatest peaceful social revolution that this country ever knew.
Absolutely.
A great welfare move. And it was said that there should be a net there over society, and no family and no individual should fall through it. And the jewel in the crown of that welfare system that was established at that time, of course, was the National Health Service.
Yes.
Which we just celebrated its 70th anniversary. And I'm a little cross, I tell you, because I've not heard very much spoken of Aneurin Bevan, who was a great architect of it.
That's true, yes, that's true.
I think it is true, don't you think so?
I think so.
I talked to some of my colleagues in the House of Lords the other day. I was rather complaining a little bit over a cup of tea on that. And one was a former nurse, a very senior nurse, and the other was a practising doctor. She was Welsh, was the doctor. And they disabused me of this. They said, no, sorry, we've been to so many functions. Of course, they were health people.
Welsh,
yes,
of course.
Yes. So they said,
obviously celebrated in
Wales.
Celebrated
in Wales. However, I feel sorry that today, I think if you ask younger people, the founder of the National Health Service, they wouldn't know Aneurin Bevan's name.
No.
And of course, in later years, I got to know him personally.
Yes.
This great fiery Welshman,
yes,
who challenged society and created the National Health Service.
That's marvellous.